Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Agile Uprising podcast. We've got a panel show today, and on our panel, we have Sarah Baca. Want to say hello, Sarah?
Hi.
Andrew Leff.
What's good?
No awesome shoes, but awesome hat today. Mike Caddell.
Howdy, y'all. And who are you?
And myself, Claudia Orozco-Gomez. So today, do you all remember what we're going to talk about? Or you just said, hey, I'll come join and we'll see what happens?
I remember the topic sounded like it would be really engaging, but I'd be lying if I could put more than that to it.
I think we were going to talk, and any opportunity to talk to you, Claudia, is a good opportunity to chat. So I'm not sure the topic was relevant.
This group.
I know, right? Why don't you refresh our memory?
Yes, let's do that. Jay did this thing that he tends to do where he just like drops something in our discourse and then we all start talking about it. So the thing that he dropped in there was this market supply and demand of different roles. And it had 4 quadrants that basically said, or the thing that stuck out to us was the market needs more Scrum Masters and the market needs less Agile coaches. So that kind of caused some reactions.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
You remember that?
Yeah. I do. I remember it. And I'm having a similar reaction to when I read it to when you just recited it. So I'm still having a little bit of I have a thought.
Do you want to react out loud? Because I can see your faces, but on the podcast, we're not be able to see these faces.
My initial kind of knee-jerk reaction is there a huge difference? Aren't Scrum Masters coaches, right? So to me, it's kind of, I don't like the term Scrum Master in the way that sometimes it's used as a leveling, right? Oh, you're just a Scrum Master. Well, I'm a team coach, right? I coach my team in Scrum. So right. I don't know. To me, I look at my Scrum Masters and Scrum Masters in the industry very much as coaches. And to me, that's, kind of, they're already doing learning at the team level. And as you grow as a coach, you can start looking across the various levels of the organization and focus in different areas. But, the roots are the team. So that's my initial reaction.
Yeah. And the whole mindset that a Scrum Master is different from a coach, kind of what you were just saying, Leff, is a non sequitur in my head. Because someone who is acting in the role of a Scrum Master as defined in the Scrum Guide, which is where the Scrum Master role comes from, is coaching within that team and the organization. I actually had a bit of a back and forth on LinkedIn with somebody about this. I rarely engage in that kind of stuff, but this one just like,
you went there.
Yeah, I went there. I totally did. And, basically called it out, said, hey, Scrum Guide says this. And then somebody else jumped in and said, yeah, well, the Scrum Guide gets revised all the time and it's probably going to be revised later. And then some say, blah, 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 blah. So I went back just for my own sanity and I looked. The original version of the Scrum Guide says the Scrum Master is a coach to the team and the organization. And that language has been almost literally unchanged in every revision since. So I speculate that if you were to talk to the founders, the creators of Scrum, they would say, yeah, of course that person is a coach. I mean, kind of that role grew out of
going like version by version. What chapter is it in? What text changed?
Yeah, no, legit. I was like, I had all my big 47-inch monitor. I had all versions open, and I was, and I was even like, it's on the same page in 4 versions in a row. It's like that's how consistent it's been. But the Scrum Master role, as least as lore has it, was kind of a continuation or a variation of what was originally an XP coach, which was truly somebody that was a coach, not a taskmaster or a release manager or a project manager or some of the 27 other things that get dumped onto the lap of the
Ceremony
poor people
facilitator.
titled as ceremony facilitator. I don't even like the word ceremony. It's like that gives it such a
We're getting there. We're
fake.
starting. We're opening up
Yeah,
Mike's different troubles.
it's an event, right? And it's a thing, and it's just like, yeah, there's just so much. Yeah, never mind. So yeah,
I
so
totally
Sarah,
yeah, Leff, I agree.
I want to pick your brain, Sarah. You were starting to talk, but I think what really got us going is that Jay said Scrum Master Coach hybrid is the future, and you immediately replied, it should be the present.
Oh, yeah. Well, speaking to what Andrew and Mike are talking about with how it's very much the same competencies, I think. So for a lot of Scrum Masters, they are more focused on the team level and they are facilitating the events like you all were talking about. And so I think ideally, like in a perfect world where you have very strong Scrum Masters and very strong coaches, they do have the same skill level and they're doing much of the same thing. And I think in reality, a lot of times Scrum Masters are folks who've gone through like a training and then, slap those initials behind their name, and all they know how to do is run meetings, quote unquote, and then they think that's their job. And then that's, in my opinion, why so many folks have been losing their jobs, is because that's what they think being a Scrum Master is. And as those of us on this call know, it's so much more than that and should be. And so I've worked in places where like our titles were almost interchangeable between Scrum Master and Coach, because we knew what we did and, we could bring value at all the levels. And a Scrum Master that just focuses on the team and doesn't focus on the system around the team is not bringing a lot of value. So
Sarah, as you're speaking, thought crept to mind. I feel like this whole thing is kind of at an inflection point.
Yeah.
It started with COVID, and it's finally coming to the surface. What if we disabused ourselves of the notion that the role of Scrum Master had to be dedicated to a team or to two teams, or even that there was even a role for a Scrum Master? Why not pursue the ideal state of the team looks after themselves and there's this person? Maybe in the future it's the Jay Hershko AI chatbot, who knows, that gives feedback to the team and helps or supports the team when they need a little bit of a different voice with the rest of the organization. But maybe all right, so a little bit of Mike After Dark, Claudia. Here you go. What if we got rid of
do it.
What if we just got rid of the notion of Scrum Master? No disrespect to the creators of Scrum, but why do we need that role? Why can't we create an environment where the teams can do those things with some support, and that support can come from somebody who's outside the team and can give them what they need?
It
so many
feels like it's starting to be less of a relevant role too, because how many teams, or maybe it's just in my experience, but how many teams do we really see that stay on Scrum forever?
That's a good point.
I think too, to add to the mix of what you're all kind of touching on, is the maturity, right? Across teams, what's the level of maturity? So, do they need a dedicated Scrum Master? Maybe. Or is that Scrum Master there to help upskill and mirror and reflect back to the team kind of areas of opportunity that might be blind spots, right? So I also think, and this is a hot take, it's not Andrew After Dark, this is just a hot take from Andrew. I don't think the training really supports the way Scrum teams need to learn. They don't, how, and to me, when I'm challenging my Scrum Masters, is what are you doing to seek knowledge? How are you gathering information outside of just reading the Scrum Guide or taking a certification? How are you applying the learning that you just went through or experienced, or in the past have experienced, to apply that and experiment, right? And how are you crowdsourcing your information and building your book of business around how you're scrumming a team? So I think that's a blind spot for a lot of Scrum Masters, and organizations don't support that continuous learning. A lot of the times financially, not everyone has deep pockets, right? So sourcing that can be expensive.
But do you really need the deep pockets, though? First of all, I just want to say scrumming is my new favorite verb. Thank you. But do you really need it? I feel like there's so much out there that's free, and yes, you do have to like sift through it to see what's relevant and what is real. But do you need the real training? Sorry, not the real training. That's not what I want to say. Do you need like the paid for training to grow? I know it would be ideal. And I know like the Scrum Master training, I'm thinking back. So what, it's been about 10 years for me now. So it's not very fresh. But the Scrum Master training that I had, it was only about the framework.
I think it depends on the training, though. There's some, like Mike was talking before you were speaking about his Orsk experience and how he's a totally transformed person. Hope you're okay with me saying that to everybody,
Yep.
Mike.
Go for it.
And I've been in trainings that I felt the same way. And I don't think that that is the kind of thing that you can teach yourself. You need something outside of your personal system to challenge you and provoke you to help you to grow. I do think you can grow a whole lot on your own. And I think a lot of it, especially in the roles we're in, is personal growth. Because if you don't own your own shit, then you totally can't help people own theirs. So that self-awareness is really vital. And going back to what you were saying earlier, Mike, about like really needing Scrum Masters, I think again, in like a perfect world where teams could mature and be left that way, that perhaps they could gain those competencies. But I've worked in so many organizations where they had like that hat model and they were like, okay, we're mature, get rid of the Scrum Masters. And it was a cluster. I mean, it was horrible because the team members don't want to do a lot of that facilitation and organization and stuff that the Scrum Masters do. And there are more advanced competencies, like we were talking about with training, that they're never going to invest in because they're not interested in. That's not what they do.
And can they be that objective eye too?
Yeah. And somebody from outside their system who can say, guys, this is bullshit. I see what you're doing. It's not working. Stop it. You know,
Sarah, you're my kind of Scrum Master and team coach. I want somebody to call me out on my bullshit.
That's what
I
we need
live for that.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of along those lines, Sarah, yes, that's one model. And kind of where what I was trying to put voice to a few minutes ago was there's maybe the other end of the spectrum of that model. So it's a spectrum as opposed to a single model, a single definition. But some the day-to-day, maybe the team doesn't need that dedicated person, but they do need somebody, like you say, that can be objective and can reflect back, reveal to the system what's happening within the system. And that's actually easier when you're not in the system. I have worked with teams and Scrum Masters and organizations where the Scrum Master, for lack of a better term, goes native and just becomes so part of the team that they don't, that person does not, for whatever reason, call them out on their stuff. So it's a spectrum, but I can, kind of the larger point that's really coming to my head is the what Leff was talking about at the outset, the stratification and the narrowed focus or constraints is not serving us well. And what would serve us really well is to focus on outcomes, have the outcome for the team, the outcome for the business, and then be flexible to support that team in whatever way it needs to get to the outcomes that it's striving for, that the organization demands from it. Now, that's like, Mike's heaven that is going to be a rare bird.
I'm with you there.
But just because that's rare doesn't mean we can't work towards it iteratively and incrementally, kind of like the stuff we coach and teach. So anyway,
so what are you're talking about your maybe your heaven, your high dream, your ideal? what are we really seeing? We started talking about it earlier, but in case somebody wants to maybe check themselves and say, oh, maybe I'm not doing this thing as well as I could be. What are we really seeing today? So people that are Scrum Masters, what do we really see out in the field?
So I can say that I haven't Scrum Mastered in a bit. I dip my toe in those waters, but for now, I have not scrummed a team in probably 2 years. But I do work with, and I'll have a lot of Scrum Masters that work with me. I have 2 large portfolios that I manage, so lots of teams. So hopefully my credentials support what I'm about to say. I see a lot of the Scrum Masters, and I think Sarah touched on this, is, get tapped on the shoulder. Hey, we think you'd be okay at this. You want this new title? Great. You still get to do your old job, but now you get this new job that you can't fully dedicate time to. Hey, we're going to send you to 2 days of training. You're a Scrum Master. Congratulations, but you're also an engineer. So we need you to write lines of code. Or the other scenario is you get I'm going to use Jira as the tool. You get the Jira admin, right? The person that just lives in Jira, that knows how to run reports, that serves a higher level,
Yeah.
and not really understanding the power and the importance of a Scrum Master to a team, and how that role serves the care and feeding needed for a team to be successful or understand why they're not successful. And I don't think the industry, they say they see it that way, truly behave in a way that allows that role to flourish, right? If you work in big, large enterprise organizations, ask HR the career progression of a Scrum Master. You don't usually see it, right? It's, oh, you're a Scrum Master 1, 2, or 3. Great. Okay. Well, what does that mean?
You have graduated to enterprise coach. Congratulations.
So it's a weird kind of nuance. I don't think the industry has evolved in a way that understands how to have a career path for a Scrum Master. This was something that was near and dear to me at my last role, where we created that experience, right? We built career progression because it was very important. And to me, it empowers the Scrum Master to want to do something different, as opposed to just feeling stuck.
Yeah.
What do you see, Sarah?
Yeah, I agree with that about the career progression. It seems like it's Scrum Master to Agile coach to enterprise coach, when like really those are 3 completely different jobs in a lot of ways.
I want to be a galactic coach.
We had a whole podcast about kind of what you just talked about, Sarah, in regards to kind of what is the difference, right? And we, back a couple years ago when we talked about this, it was really bill rates, right? As an enterprise coach, I can bill you for a lot more than as a team coach or a Scrum Master. So I think there's also, I don't know if that's still as predominant in the industry. I'm sure it is. But I feel like it has evolved to some degree. But I do think that just because you're a great Scrum Master doesn't mean that you're automatically wanting to be an enterprise coach. There's a lot of nonsense at the enterprise level that isn't fun. I was an enterprise coach and still am to some degree for many, many years. And there's just a lot of overhead that has nothing to do with Agile, Scrum, Kanban, anything other than just headaches, right? It's babysitting, daycare work.
Bill rates are in the toilet right now if you haven't looked recently.
I don't even look anymore.
I mean, legit, I saw a job screenshot of a job posted on LinkedIn, and then I went found it on LinkedIn, so it wasn't like photoshopped or anything. But it was a role for a Scrum Master with 7 years of experience as a Scrum Master, and on contract, paying $15.15 an hour.
Whoa.
That's below minimum wage in 2 states.
That's insane.
Don't they pay $50 an hour at McDonald's now?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, granted, it's an outlier, but yeah, back, kind of to that Foursquare that Jay dropped on us.
Mm-hmm.
There's a supply demand imbalance, and you see the same thing with people who have the badge of coach, and yeah, it's weird. It's different.
With
It
coaching
definitely
being,
is.
agile coaching especially being so unregulated, where anyone can call themselves a coach, I think that's part of that
Oh,
quality.
I'm one of them.
But
One of those
Claudia,
anyone.
we know that you can do more than most people, so
On
you've earned it
discourse, I
legit.
can. Have you seen me in real life?
You never
Although
know.
I
I
don't
want to.
go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I want to tug on a couple of things that you were all bringing up about. There was one where Mike was talking about coaching towards outcomes, and another thing where, Leff, you were saying how a team coach or a scrum master, or whatever it is that we want to call them, should be coaching the team towards success. I find that that success today in real life, a lot of times is interpreted as this team is happy or this team is cadenced, which doesn't necessarily guarantee jack shit besides people smiling in the morning and knowing what they're going to do tomorrow or in 2 weeks' time.
Mhm.
So I've got a real problem with that because as much as I do care deeply, deeply care for people and I want people to be happy on teams, doesn't mean a damn thing if you're not producing the right work.
It's a
So
business.
I've got so much trouble with that one. And the other bad pattern along the lines of growth is I see a lot of times like that growth plan is you can quote unquote successfully Scrum Master one team. You have graduated now to more teams.
Uh-huh.
Pat on the back. Good job. Now you can Scrum Master 3 teams. And we all know how that goes because there's no in-depth. There's no depth. You do like I talked about it in our conversation. I said you get stuck in Mike's gonna kill me, but you get stuck in the ceremony trap. Or when you've got that many teams to tend to, there's no way that you could possibly help them dig deeper. You just end up scheduling shit all the time and you're preparing from one retro to the next. If you're smart enough, you can recycle stuff, but
Mhm.
there's no time to actually observe, engage, or do quality coaching.
Yeah.
Okay, that's my bit.
So the pro tip
Rant
for
over.
anyone who
I
finds
feel better.
themselves having to look after the well-being of 3 Scrum teams, the only way to survive that is that you get your teams to where they can do the events without you being there.
Mhm.
If you can't do that, it's as Claudia described, it's a living hell for everybody. It's bad for the team, it's bad for the organization, stinks for the
And if
Scrum
you're the type
Master.
of Scrum Master who is more junior in your journey and you think that running meetings is your job, then you're doing that back to back every day and doing nothing else.
So let me ask the group this question in line with this, right? Is that the sole responsibility of the Scrum Master to figure it out, or are organizations not preparing kind of the structure to say these are kind of this is what good looks like, this is where we would like for you to be at a certain point? And I'm not talking about running assessments, right? The maturity assessments, I won't give you a hot take on that, but they can be good, but they can also be detrimental. So I'm curious, in your industry experience, do you see organizations really understanding kind of how to set the standard for the organization and not just pure Agile, pure Scrum, right? Like really meeting the organization where they are. And then the Scrum Masters can create that sphere of influence to help build the maturity in a different way, right? Just because you plop in, you parachute in a bunch of Scrum Masters doesn't make you Agile. It doesn't do anything, right? It just gives you a new role to accommodate and have some insight or something.
So are you talking about organizational maturity or are you talking about like the actual team coach Scrum Master's maturity?
I think a little bit of both, to be honest. I think you start at the team level and kind of where should we aspire to be as a team, right? And let's showcase the journey that helps us get there so the rest of the organization can learn about the efficiencies that we've gained or the challenges that we've suffered due to too much disruption, which we weren't able to honor any of our commitments. So kind of balancing both, I think it I don't think you can have just a silo at the team level without exposing, right? Bad news doesn't get better with age. So let's share it all. Let's keep, let's really open the kimono on this and really share what makes people uncomfortable. Someone said this to me the other day, and when I was, kind of belly aching about career path and so forth. And they said, you know what you should do? Do something that scares you. Do something that scares you, right? Not be brave, just do something that scares you. So I want that mentality from my Scrum Masters. I want them to really help the organization do things that are scary, right? I want them to be the voice of change. To me, they are the ultimate change agents.
But do you really see that? Like, are they joining this profession, for lack of a better word, because they believe in the cause? Sarah's
Some do, some don't, I'd argue.
knowing Sarah.
I'll give you the consultant answer. It depends, and I'll let someone else fill it in.
Yeah, Sarah talked about her magic wand earlier, so people just get the magic wand. Oh, you're a Scrum Master now.
Yeah.
But
I think there are a lot of project managers who are, changing their title to Scrum Master so that it sounds more modern. Sadly, I know when I was hiring Scrum Masters, there were a lot of resumes that I got where it seemed really clear that they were doing a find replace from project manager to Scrum Master because the job described was
awful.
Project management, which has its place in certain organizations, but that wasn't what I was hiring. So
you can see job recs that are the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So what are we really looking for then?
I'll offer an opinion. What I look for and aspire for others to maybe take up is for someone who can be a support and a guide, almost like a jungle guide to the team. So guide that person, that team through the jungle of their day-to-day existence in corporate America.
I love that metaphor. There's a tiger over there. Watch out. Don't let out.
Yeah. That tiger may be the senior VP who wants to crash the retro. Right. One time I canceled a retro because a senior VP wanted to come and crash the retro, and I told him stay away. But it could also be that there are things within the team that are, little earthworms kind of creeping up and making things tricky on the team. So a jungle guide. And jungle guide doesn't have the fun for the tourists, but rather helps them navigate their way through and have an awesome experience at the end. That's what I aspire for this to evolve to. And you can call it whatever you want. You can call it Mickey Mouse. You can call it Scrum Master. I give a crap.
Yeah. I
love that you said that because I know I went to a few conferences this year and people ask me, the regular question, who are you? Where are you from? What do you do? And well, I call myself an Agile coach today, but yesterday it was something different. Tomorrow to be something else.
Yeah.
So maybe I'll be a jungle guide tomorrow. Thank you, Mike.
Cool.
Yeah, there's a good. Oh, go ahead, Sarah.
I think the thing that makes the Scrum Master role so hard is that you have to be a disruptor and a change agent, like Leff was talking about, and you have to have a huge heart and love for people that's genuine. And having both of those, the courage to have both of those, especially in a corporate environment where fitting in and wearing masks is what's rewarded, like that is just really freaking hard. And I think that's why it's so easy to do this job poorly.
Yeah,
that's a great statement.
Yeah, if I can tag on something to that, Sarah, what part of what makes that so hard is that, again, so this is a bit of a hot take. The organizations that are seeking people in these kind of roles, if you looked at the adoption curve, tend to be the late majority or the laggards. No offense intended to any organizations that are hiring, but it's just reality. if you look at it, I think there was somebody on one of the more recent podcasts that said the same thing. Banks, insurance companies, utilities, very risk averse organizations, just culturally. Like, ask a bank to take a risk unless it's like, the investment arm, even then, not their jam. So it's understandable. Those are, people that are they're still going through on the earlier parts of this journey. So those organizations, generally speaking, there are exceptions. They don't really give a flip about what you just said, Sarah. They care about the numbers, and
Yeah.
and so that makes it even harder. And we're I think, as kind of Agile adherence, we're all kind of looking for that unicorn, the organization that's got the deep pockets and is willing to do all the cool things, and also has the willingness to create an environment where you can do all the cool things that Sarah just described better than I ever could.
So I'm kind of torn on that one though, because yes, that's where they're hiring, but wouldn't that also be like we would want to go to the unicorn places? I'm personally, I kind of feel like I'm there, so I can't complain. But then aren't we needed in those places that are hiring, that are the laggards, that are really, really hard to change? And so that's why, like to what Sarah was saying, that's where we need people with courage and guts.
Yeah,
absolutely.
and I think to all of everyone's point, I kind of like so I've done a lot of interviewing in the Scrum Master arena, right? And I'm going to reveal some secret sauce. I don't usually ask about anything Scrum or Kanban related when I'm interviewing a Scrum Master. So I want to know your personality, and I'll share a quick story. One of the Scrum Masters I hired, they interviewed with me, and I hired them in 10 minutes of the interview, like on the spot. They literally walked into the interview with an icebreaker. They challenged me, made me uncomfortable, had the biggest smile on their face, had very little experience in Scrum, but they blew me away with the way they were able to facilitate me, right? And I'm a hard target to hit. So I love the mentality of, hey, let's be tour guides and not travel agents, right? I don't want to plan your destination. I want you to kind of experience this with me pointing out some places to observe. So I think your personality, your willingness to be risky, your drive, your energy, and the emotion you bring to the table needs to be infectious, because that helps build trust and people want to follow, right? So you want the team to have, I don't want to say leader and title, but someone that has their back. And to build that trust, you need to have a certain personality, in my opinion. And if you don't have that, you're just going to be looked at as the project manager, the team admin, the person that just puts things in a Jira. So that's hard to get out of a 30 or 60-minute interview. So that's why, to me, it's really important to showcase who you are, how you've gotten to be who, and kind of what makes you tick. And I know, I guess in the corporate world, it's not appropriate to ask personal things, but I like to know who you are, because especially you're going to be working with people, right? You're not writing lines of code, so you can't hide. You have to be interactive. You have to be engaged, and you have to get people to want to listen to the feedback when it's icky, right? Why are we overcommitting to all this work? We don't have the capacity. Well, because we were told. Okay, well, who told you? Why are we doing that? You need to be able to challenge the team in a way that doesn't turn them off or shut them down. Or if it does, you need to be aware that, hey, I'm feeling a shutdown. What's going on? How can, let's talk about it. Dealing with friction is such an important part of this role, in my opinion. So sorry, I got a little bit passionate there.
No, that's good. But it makes me think too, that is one of the things that I feel I was less or the least prepared for, is the friction and the conflict, because you are working with human beings and you are going to you're going to help them see a lot of things that they might have hoped stayed hidden or underneath the rug, and you're shedding a light on that. And that is one of the things that I feel even today, like I'm learning this on a daily basis. And this is one of the things that I wish I would have known from the get-go is how do you deal with that? So I've got
As you were talking, I'm reminded of a thought I had recently after one of my coaching sessions, which is the value in an organization flows through the relationships within that organization. So, and the Scrum Master's biggest impact is on the relationships within their sphere of influence. So just kind of made
like
it,
that.
Brought the dots together.
I don't think we talk enough about how important it is that you're likable.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean
what's likable mean?
Like
Sarah?
where you have the ability to intentionally build up trust with people so that when you do challenge them and it like is a subtraction from that jar of connection, that like you have enough marbles left in the jar that they still trust you and like you, even if you F up and challenge them in a way that is really dramatic and, you know, wasn't the best way, because that's how you learn. You know, like if you've built that trust in that relationship, then you can repair. But if you just come in, and I've seen this so many times from people who call themselves Agile coaches and say, okay, this is what you're doing wrong, and then this is what you need to change, and without building a relationship at all, like that just backfires and it just doesn't work. If it did work, then I would do it, but it doesn't work. Like you got to make friends.
Yeah. I had a little bit of an allergic reaction to the word likable.
Yeah, I know. It does sound,
but I get what you're saying is like,
but
you have to have
tolerable
credibility and trust
Yeah.
is what I kind of hear that as.
But I don't think so. Orsk taught me this, right? And I don't mean to keep dipping our toes in the organizational
That's all
relationship.
right. We all know that you get money every time you say the word. Keep
Yeah,
going.
right. I wish. Is this aversion to certain words, right? Like likable. Why would that be a bad thing to talk about? Like we all kind of want to be likable, right? I don't know too many people that are like, I don't want anyone to like me. It just feels bad, right? So
because we're rebels without a cause.
Well, I love the rebel mentality, right? Like I am absolutely radical in my thinking and believe that we all need to have a bit of radicalism and direction to disrupt in a way that can kind of, you know, I'm a fan of public shaming, put people in stockades, right? Like, hey, you didn't make your sprint, you're committed to the stockade for an hour and everyone can throw tomatoes at you. But I jokingly, but I do think there's some validity to accountability. So likability, you're able to influence things from a different point of view, right? If you're just looked at as a function, I'm not sure how much you can coach, right? And influence. If you're just there to serve a function, maybe I can be, you know, I'm sure many could argue that that's not an accurate statement, but in my experience, I really do see the, you know, touch a heart, open a mind really works. And a lot of times we get a bad rep as Scrum Masters, coaches, and whatnot, thought leaders around being too squishy. Why is that bad? Why is it bad? Like, I don't understand. I want to be able to sit down at the dinner table with the people I work with, have a conversation, and just get to know everybody, right? Like every day should be breaking bread.
That's why.
Yeah, but I think it comes back to what Sarah was saying is it's that whole balance of, yes, you've got the human side, but you've also got the courage to call people out on their shit. And we're not really getting the results, or this is what we're trying to do, and help them work towards that. So you have to have that balance of both. I
look at Scrum. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I would be really sad to work with a Scrum Master or team coach or whatever who is only worrying about the squishy bit, the emotional bit, the happy side, because you're not therapists. Okay, except for Sarah. Sarah, you're a therapist now.
Like, Sarah's a legit
But for
therapist.
the rest of us mere mortals, we are not therapists.
I think too. Yeah, it plays into I look at everything like a parent, right? It does not stop and end, whether it's at work or at home. How, are we being respectful? Are we being truthful? Are we liars? So I look at things as a very kind of like how I would treat my kids. I know that sounds really bad, not that
Oh yeah, we're
professionals are
gonna go down the whole left paternalistic.
but I do think
totally changed the parent that I am. So
yeah. It really did. I look at things differently now. I have a balance of point of view. I try and meet people where they are. I also hold them to their to what they committed to, right? Hey, you committed to do these things. I'm here to help, but if you don't tell me, I'm kind of in the dark. So I'm going to bring it up when I need it, expecting it to get done, because that's kind of the relationship we've established. So
Because
I do think there's
place to hide.
clean up your room.
The key there left though is you're holding them accountable to themselves, not
Yes.
accountable to some bogus metric set by somebody who doesn't know what the heck they're talking about.
And accountable doesn't mean punishment either,
Nope.
which I think a lot of people
Except for Leff.
unless you're one of Leff's kids.
Public Humiliation by Andrew Leff.
That's right.
New book.
We need to be able to hold
How
each
to
other.
humiliate respectfully.
Maybe humiliation's too strong. Public shaming, is that better?
Yeah. I heard a great term along those lines a couple months ago. It's called a diplomatic hand grenade.
Oh gosh.
You drop a
that's
diplomatic
good one.
hand grenade on the table.
We're gonna
That's a good
keep
one.
that one.
Yeah.
That one's definitely going in a clip.
Yeah.
I think what's coming up for me though, as we're talking through this, and I know we're into a great conversation, is I really feel that the Scrum Master role is still grossly misunderstood.
Yeah.
It really is.
That's what, 8 lines in the Scrum Guide, and
Yeah.
Oh,
there's 8 lines
yes.
or whatever. I'm just making that number up, but it's not much more than that.
Just
It
because
says a whole lot.
easy though, right? I mean, like Scrum is a simple framework, but how well is that done?
Yeah.
There's-
How well is
there's-
waterfall done though, too, right? So we could
thanks.
point at
Or
all of it
anything.
and say, yeah, it's all been bastardized to accommodate lots of different things that don't serve the greatest purpose, right?
Now, there was a point earlier about one Scrum Master for a team, one Scrum Master for 2 teams, 3 teams, whatever. I think there's a heuristic that is overlooked in trying to make that judgment call. I steal it out of the team topologies world, and that's the cognitive load for a Scrum Master.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, y'all probably had this experience. I know I've had it in more organizations I care to admit. There's a formula. Heck, in some of the scaled agile training I've delivered, it's literally on a slide. The formula, the gearing ratios, I've heard it called, X Scrum Masters or product owners to team. And what's really missing is the cognitive load. So a team that's functioning well, they're fairly stable, they're in a groove, you can be a little more hands-off, more towards that far end of the spectrum of Mike's heaven there. But a team that's in massive conflict, that has people coming and going, seagull management dropping in on them, they need more support, and the cognitive load on the team and on the Scrum Master are going to be higher. So, if we want to get better outcomes, we could steal that from team topologies. I think it might actually be helpful.
I like that.
Random thought.
Manage the load.
Because the value flows through the relationships, and the cognitive load affects the health and the vibrance of the relationships within the organization. And for those that may think that's a airy-fairy squishy thing, there's bottom line impacts to those relationships.
It kind of sounds
OpenAI. They had some bad relationships at the highest level, and look what it did to them. Sorry, Claudia, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say, it kind of sounds like we're coming full circle. We should have just had Andy Clef on to come up with his conclusions of it's not that the market needs more Scrum Masters or less Agile coaches. They just need good or better Scrum Masters. I think we're all agreeing towards, yep, it's just a misunderstood role, and maybe we're not doing it as well as we could.
We haven't even really touched on the role that's labeled as a coach, agile coach, and the enterprise coach, and the galactic coach, and the all the
Do
other
we want to go
bogus
there?
levels. I don't know. Maybe
How
that's a whole
many
other
hours
episode.
have we
I
got?
don't know.
I know that sounds like part two.
The
It
part
sounds like
two.
part two.
Yeah, maybe it does need a refresher, because I do remember that podcast from a while back, Leff, on the agile coach role. What's an agile coach? So maybe we need the 2023, 2024 version.
Leff, you'll recognize this, the role of agile coach and the organizations that hire them is experiencing a myth change. The relationship between them is changing. And
Yeah,
everyone needs to adapt to that, I think.
that's a good way to put it. Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I definitely, so I actually, I'll give you a little bit of a tidbit of my journey recently. I stepped out of coaching, right? I'm an agile coach in recovery and went into product. So I actually wanted to put my money where my mouth was and say, here I am saying, just do this, just do this. This is what you should be doing. Well, now I'm on the receiving end of that. I have a coaching team that coaches me. I'm in a product role, and it's hard.
Yeah.
I have been greatly humbled in my approach to things due to the fact of I can't just sit on the sideline, right? Like I'm an actual contributor now in a different way. So it's been wild to work with Scrum Masters and coaches from a product perspective, right? To help me understand kind of what good looks like for me when it comes to being coached or, part of a team that has a Scrum Master and receiving that feedback. I'm like, oh, just do what I told you to do. Like, I don't need all this, right? So I was like, oh my gosh, I just broke my own rule. What am I doing?
Did they shame you, Leff?
They did. They did. And I appreciated kind of the feedback, and just, it's funny how easy it is to snap back. And I think that's what I'm learning is the amount of patience and grace that we're often not allowed to give or receive just due to everything is a sense of urgency. And I think Andy Clef said this best, reward firefighting and you breed a culture of arsonists. And I feel like a Scrum Master needs to have the fire extinguisher, right? We can't keep lighting fires everywhere in that way. They also need to understand how to put them out.
Yeah.
Beautifully put. All right, shall we start wrapping this guy up?
Sure. I think this was I tell you, these things go by so fast, especially with a dynamic group that has lots of insights and lots of awesome things to say. I definitely think we should do another round of this with the coaching conversation. If I'll put it out there, and we can certainly schedule something.
Do it. Part two. So what, I guess, kind of as an exit, what advice or what would you leave with a new Scrum Master or a team coach or whatever it is that we want to call them, Galaxy Coach? What bit of advice would you give them?
I'll lead off. I'd say pay attention to three things in balance with each other: mindset, measures, and mechanics. So mechanics reflect mindset, measures determine mechanics, and then mindset influences measures. So if you think about your world of work from those three perspectives and pay attention to those in balance, that will lead you towards an understanding of what's happening in your system of work, if you will. And that's it, parallel and right next to the human system that's actually operating that system of work. Kind of to the point Leff was making is just remember, have a little bit of empathy for whoever you may be encountering today or next week or whatever, because at the end of the day, value flows through those relationships. And if we don't care for the relationships, we're going to inhibit the flow of value that's going to have bottom line impacts to our customers and to our teammates and to our company.
Like that. I think for me, it's just explore. Be, I have my own aversion to this word, but be brave, be risky, be disruptive, and have a personality, right? showcase yourself,
boring.
and really experiment with the team. Push people out of their comfort zone and kind of unlock a different way of thinking, help them unlock a different way of thinking or a different way of working. And explore it. Like, go out and seek knowledge, not just at your job. Go out and experience this stuff in the world, because that is the best teacher you're going to find for bringing that back into work.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So I think to add to that, which I think is related to both of yours, is relationships, I don't think get really real until there's some conflict and some discomfort. And so instead of being afraid of that, welcome it and learn as much as you can about navigating it, because I think it's the greatest gift you can give as a coach, is to help folks navigate when things get challenging. And you can't have great relationships as long as you're terrified of conflict and disagreement. They'll just be surface level.
That's why every team working agreement should have a section on how we argue and then make up.
Mm-hmm. And Mike,
Team working agreement, what is that? That wasn't in the Scrum Guide.
Mike,
that's that relationship thing.
Our addiction to clean language, it can really help with getting curious when things start to get contentious.
Oh, yes.
Walker's work is all about. Yeah, you know too, Claudia, you did the team class. Yeah.
So I'm going to add my, we got Mike showing from contempt to curiosity. I'm going to add my 2 bits is 2 cents. It's getting late for me, so I'm confusing languages and expressions and everything. I would say invest in reflection and growing yourself. So whether it's reflecting on you and how you're practicing the role, or what the team is going through and what you're seeing. So invest the time in reflection, because it will always pay, and practice what you preach. So that's the one I feel that we don't do enough. If I can even go a little further, I would say get yourself a spotter. So whether that's a coach for yourself or a community, that kind of goes along the lines of that reflection bit. But it helps so much when you're not in it alone, and when you have somebody who is able to catch you on when you're succeeding or when you could do better.
Love it.
Oh, maybe we should, there is the Agile Coaching Growth Wheel. So for anybody who is, I think it kind of helps take away some of that fear around the coaching term, because I feel like sometimes calling yourself a team coach is a big word. There's so much behind it. It's maybe a loaded word.
Yeah.
So that might help lessen that. And it's a resource I go to and I go back to from time to time, just to see where am I growing myself? What is it that I could be doing better? If I don't get that reflection or feedback from the people that I'm working with, then maybe I can reflect on it on my own, or have my coach help me walk through that. Any last bits of advice or any words, any shout outs we'd like to give?
Shout out to you, Claudia, for being an awesome host.
Yeah. Great.
We'll see we'll see how much post-production is going to be needed on this one.
This is great. You're doing a great job.
Just keep it real. That's all.
Thank you. Yes, keep it real. That's one to live by. So with that, keep it real, and thanks to our panel. thanks to our listening audience. If you've made it, especially if you've made it all the way through to the end here. If you've enjoyed this, so this is the tongue twister bit. If you've enjoyed this episode, please give us a review, a rating, or leave a comment on your podcasting platform of choice. That one was hard. You could also subscribe. That helps. You want to join in on this conversation, keep it going. We've got the Discord server. I know I always confuse it with Discourse, but it is Discord, and there's lots of stuff happening there. And finally, support from listeners like you will help us cover our hosting and production costs. So become a patron on Patreon. Find us there. And if not, then come join the conversation for free on Discord. That's always a welcoming community.
Yeah.
So with that, until next time, this is the Agile Uprising podcast signing out. Peace.